They thought he was just another deckhand swabbing the rails of a billion-dollar yacht, and she was just another ruthless CEO who'd never gotten her hands dirty. They were dead wrong. When armed hijackers stormed the vessel in international waters, what happened next would turn a luxury cruise into a battleground and leave the world asking one question: who was the quiet man in the crew uniform? Before we begin, if you believe in stories where courage rises from the most unexpected places and one person's past becomes everyone's salvation, consider subscribing. That way, you'll never miss a moment like this. The Mediterranean sun blazed overhead, turning the azure water into liquid diamonds. The super yacht Seraphim's Dream cut through the waves like a knife through silk, its gleaming white hull a testament to wealth most people couldn't fathom. Aboard this floating palace, luxury met the sea, and power wore designer sunglasses. But on this particular afternoon, luxury was about to meet something far more dangerous. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The champagne glasses clinked in perfect harmony as Evelyn Thomas raised hers to the assembled guests on the upper deck. Her smile was practiced, polished, the kind that graced magazine covers and investor presentations. As CEO of Quantum Dynamics, she'd built an empire from algorithms and ambition, turning a garage startup into a tech conglomerate worth $42 billion. This Mediterranean cruise aboard her newly acquired super yacht was supposed to be a celebration, a reward for another record-breaking quarter. To innovation, she announced, her voice carrying over the gentle hum of the engines and the clink of silverware against fine china. And to the brilliant minds that make it possible. Around her, venture capitalists, board members, and tech executives nodded appreciatively. The Seraphim's Dream was a marvel of engineering, 200 feet of sleek luxury capable of crossing oceans. Its 6 decks house everything from a helicopter pad to a submarine bay, from a spa to a cinema. The guest list read like a who's who of Silicon Valley's elite. Each person carefully selected for this week-long voyage from Monaco to the Greek islands. Near the stern, away from the champagne toasts and networking conversations, Tristan Boyd checked the tension on a mooring line. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, the kind that came from years of maritime work. He wore the standard crew uniform, white polo shirt with the yacht's insignia, navy shorts, deck shoes with non-slip solace. His face was weathered but not old, maybe late 30s, with the kind of tan that came from actual work under the sun rather than vacation lounging. His dark hair was cropped short, military style. Though most guests wouldn't notice or care. To them, he was invisible. Just another member of the 15-person crew that kept this floating palace running smoothly. Boyd, the chief steward's voice crackled through his radio. Need you on the port side. Guest spilled champagne on the teak. Copy that, Tristan replied, already moving. He grabbed the cleaning kit from the supply locker and made his way forward, keeping to the crew passages that ran like hidden veins through the yacht's interior. As he emerged onto the port deck, he nearly collided with Evelyn Thomas herself. She'd stepped away from her guests, phone pressed to her ear, her expression tight with concentration. I don't care what the board thinks, Richard, she was saying, her voice low but sharp. We're not selling the I division. It's not negotiable. She paused, listening, then added, because some things are worth more than their market value. Tell them I said that. She ended the call and noticed Tristan for the first time. Her eyes swept over him briefly, categorizing, dismissing. The spill is near the jacuzzi, she said, not unkindly, just matter of fact. One of the investors got a bit too enthusiastic with the crystal. I'll handle it, ma'am, Tristan replied, keeping his tone neutral and professional. Something in his voice made her pause. Maybe it was the steadiness, or the way he held himself, spine straight despite the humble task. But the moment passed quickly. Her phone buzzed again, and she was gone. Heels clicking against the deck as she returned to her world of billion-dollar decisions. Tristan cleaned the spill, then moved to his next task, checking the tender boats secured on the lower deck. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The yacht was currently cruising along the French Riviera. About 20 nautical miles from Nice, the water stretched endlessly in all directions. Beautiful and isolating in equal measure, he was tightening the last securing strap when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. The distant whine of high-powered engines, growing louder, coming fast. Tristan straightened, his senses suddenly on high alert. Years of training kicked in. That sixth sense that had kept him alive in hostile waters from the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea. He moved to the railing and looked out across the darkening water. 3 speedboats. Black and sleek, cutting through the waves at aggressive angles. No running lights. No radio contact. Coming straight for them. "Captain," Tristan spoke into his radio, keeping his voice calm but urgent. "We have 3 unidentified craft approaching fast from the southwest. Possible hostile intent." There was a pause, then the captain's voice, skeptical. "Boyd, are you sure? We're in French territorial waters." "I'm sure, sir." "You need to sound the alarm, now." Before the captain could respond, the first speedboat pulled alongside the yacht. Tristan saw the grappling hooks arc through the air, saw the men in tactical gear begin to climb. He counted 6 in the first boat, more in the others. They moved with military precision, faces covered by black balaclavas. The alarm finally blared across the yacht, a piercing wail that shattered the peaceful evening. Screams erupted from the upper decks. Champagne glasses crashed to the ground. The security team, 2 men hired more for show than function, rushed toward the commotion, hands fumbling for weapons they'd never expected to use. They didn't stand a chance. The first hijacker over the rail moved like a professional. Weapon up, clearing angles with practiced efficiency. One of the security guards went down from a stun round to the chest. The second raised his hands immediately, recognizing when he was outmatched. Tristan pressed himself against the bulkhead, staying in the shadows, his mind racing through calculations. 15 hijackers, maybe more, armed with automatic weapons and stun devices. Organized, trained, probably former military or paramilitary. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was planned, executed with precision. On the upper deck, the guests were being herded together, hands raised, faces pale with shock. Evelyn Thomas stood among them, her phone on the deck where a hijacker had knocked it from her hand. Her expression was carefully controlled, but Tristan could see the fear in her eyes. The way her hands trembled slightly despite her attempt at composure, the leader of the hijacking team stepped forward, removing his balaclava to reveal a scarred face and cold, calculating eyes. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his accent American but with something else underneath, something Eastern European. "My name is not important. What is important is that you cooperate fully and no one needs to get hurt. This yacht and its contents are now under our control, as are all of you." He walked slowly among the hostages, studying faces. When he reached Evelyn, he stopped. "Miss Thomas," he said, almost cordially. "What a pleasure. Do you know your company's quantum encryption technology is worth more than this entire yacht? More than all your guests' combined net worth? My employers are very interested in acquiring it. And you're going to help us do exactly that." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I don't respond well to threats." The leader smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That's not a threat. It's a fact. You have 24 hours to transfer the access codes, or we start making this voyage very unpleasant for everyone aboard." Below deck, hidden in the shadows, Tristan Boyd made a decision. He'd walked away from this life, built a quiet existence for himself and his daughter, far from the violence he'd once lived in. But some things you never really leave behind, and some skills, once learned, never fade. He slipped deeper into the crew quarters, moving toward the emergency equipment locker where, unknown to everyone else aboard, his past and present were about to collide in ways none of these hijackers could possibly anticipate. The quiet deckhand was about to become something else entirely. The hijackers worked with brutal efficiency, separating the crew from the guests and herding everyone into the main salon. A palatial space with floor-to-ceiling windows and white leather furniture now filled with terrified people. 2 armed men stood guard at each exit, their weapons held with the casual confidence of professionals who'd done this before. Derek Vaughn, the leader, had taken over the captain's bridge. Through the yacht's intercom system, his voice echoed throughout every deck. "I want everyone to understand the situation clearly. This vessel is now 40 miles from the nearest coast, heading into international waters. No one is coming to rescue you. The French Coast Guard has been told this is a private security exercise. By the time anyone realizes otherwise, we'll be long gone." In the main salon, Evelyn stood near the windows, her mind working through scenarios and options. Around her, investors who'd built empires through calculated risks now sat on marble floors, faces drained of color. The yacht's captain, a weathered Norwegian named Henson, tried to maintain calm among the crew members, though his own hands shook. "What do they want?" whispered Cora Lawrence, Quantum Dynamics' chief financial officer, who'd been aboard for the investor meetings. "My company's crown jewels," Evelyn replied quietly. "The quantum encryption algorithms. With those, they could break into virtually any secure system in the world. Financial networks, government databases, military communications." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Would you really give it to them? Evelyn's expression hardened. Would you sacrifice everyone here to protect corporate secrets? It was a question without a good answer. Below them, in the crew quarters that most guests never saw, Tristan Boyd moved through narrow corridors with the silence of a ghost. He'd changed from his crew uniform into dark clothing from his personal locker. More importantly, he'd accessed the emergency equipment storage, a reinforced room that held everything from firefighting gear to medical supplies. And known only to him and the yacht security consultant who'd helped design these spaces, a hidden compartment containing items that weren't on any official inventory list. Tristan's hands moved with muscle memory, checking the equipment he'd hoped never to touch again. A tactical knife, matte black and perfectly balanced. Flex cuffs. A small first aid kit. He left the weapons. Those would come from the hijackers themselves if needed. His radio, set to the crew's emergency frequency, crackled softly. "All crew members are accounted for except Boyd," someone was saying. "Deckhand. Anyone seen him?" Tristan switched it off. Better they thought he was hiding somewhere, or had been overlooked. He made his way through the maintenance passages, spaces designed for crew to move unseen while performing their duties. The yacht's blueprint was memorized in his head, every corridor, every access point, every ventilation shaft. When you spent months working on a vessel, you learned its secrets. Through a narrow observation slit, he watched 2 hijackers patrol the exterior deck. They were competent but not exceptional, their movements just slightly too routine, their attention fractionally too relaxed. These were hired guns, skilled but not elite. The kind who expected their reputation and firepower to do most of the work. Tristan waited until they passed, then slipped through a service door onto the lowest deck. The sun had fully set now, and the Mediterranean stretched black and infinite under a canopy of stars. The yacht's exterior lights had been dimmed, leaving pools of shadow between the illuminated areas. He heard voices above, Harsh commands in English and what sounded like Russian. More hijackers securing the perimeter, checking the tender boats, making sure no one could escape. One of them, a stocky man with a shaved head, broke away from his partner to check the stern cleats. He was alone for perhaps 30 seconds. Enough time for Tristan to close the distance in absolute silence. The hijacker never saw him coming. Tristan's arm wrapped around the man's throat in a textbook rear naked choke, cutting off blood flow to the brain without crushing the windpipe. 7 seconds later, the man went limp. Tristan lowered him carefully to the deck, secured his hands and feet with the man's own flex cuffs, and dragged him into a storage compartment. 1 down. 14 to go. The hijacker's weapon was a Heckler & Koch MP7, compact but deadly. Tristan checked the magazine, 30 rounds, and tucked it into the shadows for later retrieval. He wasn't ready for a direct confrontation, not yet. Information first, then action. Moving like water through the yacht's hidden spaces, Tristan made his way toward the main salon. Through a maintenance access panel, he could see into the room where the hostages were being held. Evelyn sat near the center, her posture straight despite the circumstances. She was speaking quietly to the elderly investor beside her, her hand on his shoulder in reassurance. 3 guards in the room. 2 by the main doors, 1 roving. The roving guard was the problem, constantly scanning, weapon ready. Former military for certain, probably Eastern European special forces based on his movement patterns. Tristan's radio, which he'd switched back onto monitor communications, crackled. Sector 3 clear, a voice reported in accented English. Copy, Derek Vaughn replied from the bridge. Miss Thomas has 30 minutes to make her decision. After that, we start encouraging cooperation. Tristan's jaw tightened. He'd heard enough threats like that to know what they meant. He backed away from the observation point and made his way toward the bridge level. The yacht's command center was 3 decks up, accessible by the main stairs or the crew's service ladder. Tristan chose the latter, ascending in darkness, his breathing controlled and silent. At the bridge level, he paused. 2 guards outside the door, both alert. Getting past them would mean either taking them down simultaneously, which was risky, or creating a distraction. Tristan chose option 3. He retraced his path to the engine room, a space he knew intimately from his months maintaining the yacht systems. The Seraphine's Dream was powered by twin diesel engines, each capable of producing enough power to run a small town. The control systems were computerized, but had manual overrides for emergencies. Tristan located the fuel flow regulator for the starboard engine and adjusted it carefully. Not enough to cause damage, but enough to create an imbalance that would make the yacht list slightly to one side and trigger warning alarms on the bridge. He counted to 30. Then the alarms began to wail. On the bridge, chaos erupted. Derek Vaughn's voice barked orders. What's happening? Engine malfunction, one of his technical specialists reported. Starboard engine losing pressure. Get someone down there. One of the guards from outside the bridge door was dispatched to investigate. That left 1 guard at the entrance and Derek with 2 other hijackers inside the bridge. Better odds, but still not ideal. Tristan waited in the shadows as the dispatched guard hurried past, heading toward the engine room where he'd find the problem, but not the cause. As soon as the man disappeared down the corridor, Tristan moved. The remaining bridge guard stood with his back to the door, watching the corridor. Tristan approached from the opposite direction, using a service passage that emerged behind the man. His knife was in his hand, but he reversed it, using the pommel instead of the blade. A single precise strike to the base of the skull. Exactly the right amount of force to induce immediate unconsciousness without permanent damage. The guard crumpled. Tristan caught him, lowered him silently, and dragged him into a nearby supply closet. 2 down. Through the bridge door's small window, Tristan could see Derek Vaughn bent over the navigation console, studying something on a tablet. 2 other hijackers flanked him, weapons slung but ready. Tristan could have taken them. Could have gone in fast and hard, used surprise and skill to even the odds. But that would alert the others, and with hostages spread throughout the yacht, a firefight would be catastrophic. No, he needed to be smarter. Needed to turn their own plans against them. He keyed the radio he'd taken from the first hijacker, mimicking the accent he'd heard. Sector 5, need assistance. Possible security breach, lower deck. The response was immediate. Copy, sending backup. Through the bridge window, Tristan watched one of Derek's men leave to investigate the false alarm. Now there were 2 on the bridge. And the odds were getting better, but before Tristan could move, Evelyn's voice came through the intercom, clear and defiant. Mr. Vaughn, I've made my decision. I'm not giving you access to anything. You can threaten all you want, but I won't be responsible for putting that technology in the hands of criminals. Derek's response was cold. Then I suppose we'll need to provide you with proper motivation. Bring me one of the hostages. Let's see how long her principles last when people start getting hurt. Tristan's decision crystallized in that moment. No more reconnaissance. No more waiting. It was time to act. 6 weeks earlier. Before the hijacking, before the terror, before everything changed, Tristan Boyd had been living the quietest life he could manage. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of his small apartment in Villefranche-sur-Mer, a picturesque coastal town just east of Nice. The space was modest. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely large enough for 2 people, a living area with furniture from second-hand shops. But the windows opened to a view of the harbor, where fishing boats bobbed alongside tourist yachts, and the Mediterranean stretched blue and infinite toward the horizon. Dad, I can't find my other shoe, a voice called from the bedroom. Tristan smiled, flipping the omelette in the pan with practiced ease. Did you check under your bed? Why would it be under my bed? Why is your shoe ever anywhere it's supposed to be? Luna Boyd emerged from her room, 7 years old, with her father's dark hair and her late mother's bright eyes. She was carrying one sneaker and wearing an expression of deep concentration, as if the missing shoe were a philosophical problem rather than a practical one. Found it, she announced triumphantly, holding up the shoe that had indeed been under her bed. But only because you told me where to look. But only because you told me where to look. Teamwork, Tristan replied, sliding the omelette onto a plate. Just like we practiced. They ate breakfast together at the small kitchen table, a ritual Tristan had maintained since Luna was old enough to sit in a high chair. These moments, simple and unremarkable, were the ones he treasured most. No adrenaline, no life or death decisions, just a father and daughter starting their day. Are you working on the big boat again today? Luna asked between bites. The super yacht, yes. Miss Thomas is taking it out for a cruise next month, so we're making sure everything is perfect. Is she nice? The lady who owns it. Tristan considered the question. He'd only interacted with Evelyn Thomas a handful of times. During his months working on the Seraphim's Dream, she was professional. Demanding but fair, the kind of person who expected excellence because she delivered it herself. She's focused, he said finally. She built something from nothing, and she protects it. Luna nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense. Like how you protect me. The simple statement hit Tristan harder than it should have. Exactly like that. After breakfast, they walked to Luna's school, a cheerful building painted yellow and blue, with a playground that echoed with the sounds of young ones arriving for their day. Other parents nodded to Tristan in passing, the friendly but distant acknowledgement of a single father who kept mostly to himself. At the school gate, Luna turned to hug him. Love you, Dad. Love you more, he replied. The same exchange they'd had every morning since she was 3. He watched her run to join her friends, her backpack bouncing, her laughter carrying on the morning breeze. This was why he'd left the Navy SEALs. This moment, this normal, beautiful, ordinary moment, that would have been impossible in his old life. Tristan had joined the SEALs at 22, driven by a sense of duty and a need to prove himself. For 12 years, he'd served in some of the world's most dangerous places. Hostage rescues in Somalia, counter-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden, classified missions he could never discuss. He'd been good at it, exceptional even, rising to team leader and earning commendations that sat in a box in his closet. Never displayed. But excellence in that world came with costs. Relationships that couldn't survive the deployments. Sleep that never came easy. The weight of decisions made in split seconds that you'd carry forever. When Luna's mother, Sophie, died in a car accident, Tristan had been overseas on a mission he couldn't leave. He'd made it back for the funeral, held his infant daughter, and realized that the life he'd been living was no longer sustainable. Luna needed a father who was present, not a ghost who appeared between deployments. So he'd resigned, left the teams, and taken his skills to the only place that made sense, the sea. Maritime security consulting at first, then yacht crew work when he realized that Luna needed stability more than he needed excitement. The other crew members on the Seraphanes, Dream knew him as quiet but competent. The kind of deckhand who could fix anything, handle any situation, and never cause drama. They didn't know about the knife scars on his back or the bullet wound on his thigh. They didn't know that he could navigate by stars alone, or that he spoke 4 languages, or that he'd once swum 2 miles through enemy waters to extract a downed pilot. That was fine. Tristan preferred to be underestimated. It made life simpler. His supervisor, an experienced chief steward named Antoine, met him at the marina where the yacht was docked. "Boyd, good timing. We need to run through the safety systems before the cruise. Miss Thomas wants everything triple-checked." They spent the morning going through protocols, testing emergency equipment, reviewing communication systems. Tristan noticed things others missed. A loose fitting on a fire suppression line, a backup radio with a weak battery. Minor issues that could become critical in an emergency. "You have a good eye," Antoine observed. "Where did you learn all this?" "Here and there," Tristan replied, keeping his tone casual. "Spent some time on commercial vessels before this." It wasn't technically a lie. He had spent time on vessels, just not the commercial kind. During lunch break, Tristan sat on the dock with his phone, video calling Luna's school for a quick check-in. Her teacher, Madame Rousseau, assured him that Luna was doing well in class, excelling in mathematics and reading. "She talks about you constantly," the teacher said with a warm smile. "My father taught me this. My father can fix anything. You're raising a confident young lady." "I'm trying," Tristan said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. That evening, after work, he picked Luna up from after-school care. They stopped at the market, where she insisted on helping choose vegetables for dinner, explaining seriously that carrots were important for eyesight, and that she needed good eyesight to be an astronaut. "An astronaut this week?" Tristan asked. "Last week you wanted to be a marine biologist." "I can be both," Luna replied with the absolute certainty of someone who hadn't yet learned about limitations. "You just have to work hard and not give up." Back in their apartment, while Luna did homework at the kitchen table, Tristan prepared dinner and thought about the upcoming cruise. 2 weeks on the Mediterranean, serving wealthy guests who'd never know his name. It was good money. Money that would go into Luna's education fund and maybe, eventually, a larger apartment with a second bathroom. Simple goals for a man who'd once planned operations with international implications. "Dad," Luna said, looking up from her math worksheet, "if you had a superpower, what would it be?" Tristan considered the question while stirring pasta sauce. "The power to always keep you safe." "That's boring." "I mean like flying or invisibility." "Okay then, invisibility. What about you?" "Teleportation," Luna said immediately. "So I could visit anywhere in the world and always come back home for dinner." Tristan smiled. "That's a good power." Later, After dinner was cleared and Luna was tucked into bed with a story about brave explorers and distant planets, Tristan sat on their small balcony with a cup of coffee. The harbor lights reflected off the dark water, and somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn sounded, lonely and echoing. He didn't miss the SEAL teams, not really. Didn't miss the adrenaline or the danger or the constant edge of violence. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, he wondered if the skills he'd spent years honing would ever be needed again. If there would come a moment when the peaceful life he'd built would intersect with the warrior he used to be. He had no way of knowing that in 6 weeks, on a yacht sailing through darkening waters, that moment would arrive with devastating clarity, that the skills he'd tried to leave behind would become the only thing standing between innocent people and disaster, that the quiet deckhand would have to become. Once more, the man he'd worked so hard to stop being, but for now, on this peaceful evening with his daughter sleeping safely in the next room, Tristan Boyd was content to be nothing more than a father who fixed boats and made breakfast and believed, perhaps naively, that the violence of his past would stay exactly where it belonged. In the past, the main salon had become a pressure cooker of fear and tension. 2 hours into the hijacking, the initial shock had worn off, replaced by a grinding anxiety that settled into everyone's bones. The air conditioning was running, but the space felt suffocating with 32 people packed together under armed guard. Evelyn Thomas stood near the windows, watching the last traces of sunset fade into night. The yacht had changed course, heading away from the shipping lanes and into emptier waters. Every mile took them further from potential rescue. Deeper into isolation, Derek Vaughn entered the salon with the confidence of a man holding all the cards. 2 armed guards flanked him, weapons visible and ready. He carried a tablet in one hand and a satellite phone in the other. "Miss Thomas," he said, his tone almost cordial. "Let's have a conversation. Just you and me. The rest of these good people don't need to hear the details of our negotiation." Evelyn didn't move. "Anything you have to say, you can say here." Derek's smile was thin and cold. "I admire your courage. I really do. But courage without wisdom is just stubbornness." He gestured to one of his men. "Bring her." The guard stepped forward, but Evelyn raised a hand. "I'll walk." No need for dramatics. She crossed the salon with her head high, passing investors who'd once competed for her attention at boardroom tables. Now they watched her with expressions mixing sympathy and relief that it was her being singled out. Not them. Derek led her to the yacht's private conference room, a space designed for business meetings at sea. Mahogany table, leather chairs, walls lined with screens for video conferencing. 2 guards remained at the door while Derek gestured for Evelyn to sit. "Do you know why we chose this particular cruise?" Derek asked, settling into the chair opposite her. "It took 6 months of planning. Tracking your schedule, studying your security protocols, identifying the perfect window of opportunity." Evelyn kept her expression neutral. "I'm flattered by the attention. You should be. Your quantum encryption technology represents a paradigm shift. The ability to create truly unbreakable codes, to secure communications against any attack, that's worth more than gold. It's worth more than oil. It's power itself. And you want to sell it to the highest bidder," Evelyn said flatly. Evelyn said flatly. "Actually, my employers already have a buyer. A consortium of very motivated parties who understand the strategic value of your work." Derek leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to access your company's secure servers remotely. You're going to download the complete quantum algorithm package. And you're going to hand it over. And if I refuse?" Derek's expression hardened. "Then we start applying pressure. First, we'll select one of your guests. Let's say that elderly gentleman, the venture capitalist with the heart condition. We'll make him very uncomfortable. If that doesn't motivate you, we'll escalate. There are 32 people on this yacht, Miss Thomas. How many are you willing to sacrifice for corporate secrets? Evelyn felt ice in her veins. You're talking about torture, murder. I'm talking about consequences. Every decision has them. He slid the tablet across the table. The choice is yours, but understand something. I've done this before. I've stood in rooms like this and watched people try to be heroes. It never ends well for them. What makes you think I even have remote access from here? Evelyn asked, buying time, trying to find an angle. Derek smiled. Because I know you. I've studied your patterns. You're a workaholic who checks company servers 3 times a day, even on vacation. Your personal laptop is in your stateroom, and it has all the access credentials we need. He was right, and they both knew it. Evelyn had built quantum dynamics from nothing, working 100-hour weeks, never fully disconnecting. That dedication had made her successful. Now it had made her vulnerable. I need time to think, she said. You have 30 minutes. After that, we begin demonstrating that I'm not bluffing. Derek stood, signaling to his guards. Take her back to the salon. And Miss Thomas, use those 30 minutes wisely. Back in the main salon, Evelyn was met with desperate, questioning eyes. Cora Lawrence pulled her aside immediately, speaking in an urgent whisper. What did he say? What does he want? Everything, Evelyn replied quietly. The entire quantum encryption package. If I don't give it to him, he'll start hurting people. Then give it to him, Cora hissed. These are algorithms, Evelyn. Lines of code. They're not worth people's lives. These aren't just algorithms. In the wrong hands, they could destabilize global financial systems, compromise national security networks, enable surveillance states. Evelyn's voice was strained. The people who want this technology, they won't use it for good. And the people here? What about them? It was the impossible question. Evelyn looked around the salon at faces she knew. Investors who'd believed in her vision. Employees who'd worked beside her for years. Strangers who'd simply been unlucky enough to accept an invitation. Near the back of the room, Captain Henson caught her eye. The Norwegian had sailed through storms and engine failures, always maintaining his composure. But now his weathered face showed strain. He mouthed 2 words. No choice. Maybe he was right. Maybe the moral calculation was simple. Many lives versus abstract future harm. Maybe heroic stands only worked in movies, and real leadership meant making the ugly, practical decisions. Evelyn was still wrestling with the dilemma when the lights went out. Total darkness engulfed the salon. Gasps and shouts erupted from the hostages. The guards' flashlights snapped on, beams cutting through the blackness. Stay calm, one of the guards barked in accented English. No one move. But in the confusion, in those first seconds of darkness and chaos, Evelyn heard something else. A soft thud, barely audible over the commotion. Then another. And then a voice, close to her ear, calm and familiar. Miss Thomas, when I say move, head for the port side door. Don't run, walk quickly. Trust me. She recognized the voice. The deckhand, Boyd, the quiet man who fixed things and stayed out of the way. Before she could respond, the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a dim red glow. 2 of the guards were on the floor, unconscious. The third was looking around frantically, trying to understand what had happened. Tristan Boyd stood in the center of the salon, still wearing his crew uniform, hands at his sides. He looked utterly calm, as if standing in a room full of terrified hostages and armed hijackers was the most natural thing in the world. Who are you? The remaining guard demanded, weapon raised. Just the help, Tristan replied. Then he moved. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but would replay in Evelyn's memory for years. Tristan closed the distance to the guard with impossible speed. His hand swept the weapon barrel aside as it fired. the round punching harmlessly into the ceiling. His other hand struck the guard's wrist, and the weapon clattered to the floor. A knee to the midsection, an elbow to the temple, and the guard joined his colleagues on the deck. The salon erupted. Hostages scrambled away from the violence. Shouts echoed from the corridor as more guards responded to the gunshot. Tristan grabbed Evelyn's arm. "Now, move." She didn't argue. They ran for the portside door, Tristan's hand guiding her through the chaos. Behind them, armed hijackers poured into the salon, weapons raised, voices shouting in multiple languages. A burst of automatic fire tore through the space, where they'd been standing a second earlier. Tristan pushed Evelyn through the door and slammed it shut, his hands working the manual lock mechanism. "This way," he said, pulling her down a narrow crew corridor she'd never seen before. "Stay close and stay quiet." They moved through the yacht's hidden passages, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Evelyn's mind raced with questions. How had the deckhand moved like that? Where had he learned to disarm trained gunmen? And why did his eyes, when he'd looked at her in that brief moment before they ran, carry the weight of someone who'd done this before? "Who are you really?" she demanded as they paused at a junction in the corridor. Tristan met her gaze. And for the first time, she saw past the humble deckhand facade to something harder, more dangerous underneath. "Someone who's been in situations like this before," he said simply. "Someone who knows how to survive them. And right now, someone who's going to make sure you and everyone else on this yacht get home safely." More shouts echoed from nearby. Flashlight beams swept the corridor behind them. "Can you do what they're asking?" Tristan asked. "Can you access your company's systems from here?" "Yes, but I can't give them what they want. The consequences would be catastrophic." Tristan nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. "Then we do this the hard way. Come on." They ran deeper into the yacht's hidden spaces, toward a confrontation neither of them wanted, but both knew was inevitable. Behind them, Derek Vaughn's voice crackled through the intercom, no longer cordial, no longer patient. "Miss Thomas, you've just made this situation much more complicated. And Mr. Boyd, or whatever your real name is, you've just signed death warrants for everyone on this vessel. I suggest you both reconsider your choices, quickly." In the darkness of the crew quarters, Evelyn looked at the man beside her, really looked, and realized that the quiet deckhand had never been what he seemed. And that perhaps, just perhaps, they had a chance after all. The emergency equipment locker was cramped, dark, and smelled of oil and metal. Tristan had guided Evelyn there through a maze of crew passages, a route he'd memorized during his months on the yacht. Now they sat in near darkness, listening to the sounds of hijackers searching the decks above them. Evelyn's breathing was still rapid from the adrenaline. "We can't hide here forever. They'll search every compartment eventually." "I know," Tristan said calmly. "But we need a plan before we move again. And you need to understand what we're dealing with." He pulled out his phone, the screen's glow casting shadows across his face. His fingers moved quickly, accessing files he'd kept encrypted and buried, files from a life he thought he'd left behind. "Derek Vaughn," Tristan said, pulling up a photograph. "Former Spetsnaz, Russian Special Forces. Dishonorably discharged 8 years ago for unauthorized operations. Since then, he's been freelance, working for anyone who can pay. Hostage situations, extractions, asset recovery." Evelyn stared at the image. "How do you know this?" "Because I've encountered men like him before." And because, Tristan hesitated, then continued, "I used to do the same kind of work. Different side, different rules, but the same world." He showed her another image, this one from a decade ago. A military personnel file, heavily redacted, but with one clear photograph. A younger Tristan Boyd in Navy dress uniform, chest covered in commendations. "Lieutenant Commander Tristan Boyd, United States Navy SEALs," Evelyn read aloud. "Special Operations, Counterterrorism, Maritime Interdiction." She looked up at him. You're military. Was, Tristan corrected. Past tense. I left 6 years ago. People don't just leave the SEALs to become yacht crew. They do when they have a daughter who needs a father more than the Navy needs another. Operator. Tristan's voice carried a weight that made Evelyn stop asking questions. Luna was 6 months old when her mother died. I was overseas on a classified operation. By the time they pulled me out and got me home, Sophie had already been buried for 3 days. The raw pain in his words filled the small space between them. I held my daughter at the funeral, Tristan continued. And I realized I'd spent 12 years becoming very good at violence. Very good at solving problems with force. But I had no idea how to be a father. No idea how to raise someone in a world that wasn't about targets and missions and acceptable casualties. And acceptable casualties. So you walked away, Evelyn said softly. I walked away. Took a job with a maritime security firm for a year, enough to build a nest egg. Then found work on yachts where I could be home every night, where Luna could have a normal life, where I could be just another crew member who fixed things and stayed out of trouble. He closed the phone and the darkness pressed in again. The SEALs taught me a lot of skills, Tristan said. How to breach doors, neutralize threats, operate in hostile territory. But the most important thing they taught me was how to read people. How to identify the wolves among the sheep. And Derek Vaughn is a wolf, Evelyn said. One of the worst kind. He's not doing this for ideology or revenge. He's doing it for money, which makes him predictable in some ways and very dangerous in others. A man with a cause might hesitate. A man who's getting paid won't. Evelyn absorbed this, her analytical mind working through implications. You said you've encountered men like him before. When? Tristan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old ghosts. Operation Crosswind, Gulf of Aden 9 years ago. My SEAL team was tasked with rescuing a merchant vessel that had been hijacked by pirates. 17 crew members held hostage, ransoms being negotiated. But intelligence suggested the pirates were planning to execute hostages to pressure payment. He could still see it in his mind, as clear as if it were yesterday. The merchant ship listing in dark water, the smell of diesel and fear, the sounds of men shouting in Somali and Arabic. We went in at night, fast boat insertion. The plan was surgical, disable the pirates, extract the hostages, minimal casualties. Tristan's hands clenched in the darkness. But someone had tipped them off. We were expected. The pirates had reinforcements, heavy weapons, prepared positions. It turned into a firefight. What happened? Evelyn asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. We completed the mission. All 17 hostages extracted safely. But we lost 2 SEALs in the process. Good men. Better men than me in a lot of ways. His voice cracked slightly. Aaron Jennings and Simon Briggs. Aaron had a wife and 2 daughters back home. Simon was engaged, wedding planned for the next summer. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of loss. The investigation afterward revealed the leak, Tristan continued. A private security contractor who'd been feeding information to the pirates in exchange for a cut of the ransom. He disappeared before we could apprehend him, probably got extracted by the same people who'd hired him. That's why you left, Evelyn said, understanding clicking into place. Not just because of your daughter, but because you'd seen what happens when people treat lives as commodities. Tristan nodded in the darkness. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't walk into situations knowing that somewhere in the chain of command, someone might be working the angles, playing both sides, treating human lives like chess pieces. He turned to face her. And even in the dim light from the emergency equipment indicators, she could see the intensity in his eyes. That's why I'm telling you this. Miss Thomas, Derek Vaughn isn't going to negotiate in good faith. He isn't going to keep his word about releasing hostages. Men like him never do. Once he has what he wants, the most efficient solution for him is to eliminate witnesses. The coldness of that reality settled over Evelyn like ice water. So even if I give him the encryption algorithms, he'll still kill everyone. Probably. Maybe not immediately. Maybe he'll wait until he's clear, but he's not leaving loose ends. Which means we can't play by his rules. We have to change the game entirely. Evelyn's mind, trained by years of high-stakes business negotiations, shifted into strategic mode. What do you need from me? Information. How many guards did you count in the salon? 3 before you took them down. But I've heard at least 10 different voices over the radio and intercom. I've counted 15 total, Tristan said. Could be more, but that's the minimum. Derek is running this operation lean, which suggests either limited resources or that he's confident in his team's abilities. What are our assets? Tristan allowed himself a small smile. She was thinking tactically now, past the fear. Limited. I have basic equipment I've acquired from neutralized hostiles. No firearms yet, by choice. The yacht itself is an asset. I know every passage and system. And I have training that most of Derek's team won't expect from a deckhand. And I have access codes to systems they need, Evelyn added. Which gives us leverage. Maybe, if we're smart about how we use it. Tristan checked his phone, noting the time. They've been searching for us for 20 minutes. Derek is going to escalate soon, probably threaten hostages to draw us out. As if on cue, the intercom crackled to life. Derek's voice filled every space on the yacht. Mr. Boyd, Miss Thomas, I'm disappointed. I thought we could handle this professionally. But since you've chosen to play games, let me explain the new rules. I'm selecting 5 hostages. Every hour that you remain hidden, one of them will be thrown overboard. The Mediterranean is quite cold this time of year. I doubt they'll last long in the water. Evelyn's face went pale. He's bluffing. He has to be. But Tristan's expression was grim. He's not. This is exactly the kind of escalation I expected. He needs to demonstrate that consequences are real. Then we have to do something, now. We will, Tristan said, his voice hardening with resolve. But we do it smart. We turn his own tactics against him. And we make sure that when this is over, he's the one who regrets getting on this yacht. He started pulling equipment from the emergency locker, his movements precise and purposeful. The quiet deckhand was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Something forged in combat and honed by years of the most demanding training in the world. Evelyn watched him work and realized that Derek Vaughn had made a critical miscalculation. He'd researched her company, studied her habits, planned for her security team. But he'd never considered the possibility that the man swabbing the decks was someone far more dangerous than any security guard. What's the plan? She asked. Tristan looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw the same quality that had built empires and won wars. Absolute commitment. We're going to save everyone on this yacht, he said simply. And then we're going to make sure Derek Vaughn never threatens anyone again. The yacht's ventilation system carried sounds throughout the vessel, a feature Tristan had noted during his first week aboard. Now crouched in a maintenance shaft with Evelyn beside him. He used that knowledge to track the hijackers' movements through the distinctive echoes of boots on metal decking. 3 levels above us, he whispered. Systematic search pattern, moving stern to bow. They're professionals, but they're also impatient. Derek's timeline is tight, which means we can use that against them. Evelyn's hands were steady now, the initial shock replaced by focused determination. You keep saying we. What exactly can I do? I'm not trained for this. You don't need combat training. You need to do what you do best. Think strategically and make high-pressure decisions. Tristan pulled up the yacht's technical schematics on his phone. Every system on this vessel is computerized. Climate control, engines, ballast, even the kitchen appliances. You have administrative access to all of it, correct? Through my personal device, yes. But they confiscated my laptop, which is currently on the bridge with Derek. I saw him carrying it earlier. Tristan zoomed in on the bridge's layout. If we can get you back to that laptop, can you create chaos in their operations? Evelyn's eyes lit with understanding. I can do more than that. The yacht's automation system has override protocols. I could lock them out of navigation, trigger false alarms, even control which doors open and close throughout the vessel. That's exactly what I need. But first, we have to deal with an immediate problem. Tristan pointed to a location on the schematic. Derek said he was selecting hostages to throw overboard. That means he's moving people from the main salon to an exterior deck, probably the aft platform where it's easiest to access the water. How do we stop him without getting everyone killed? We don't stop him directly. We make it impossible for him to execute his threat, while simultaneously making him think we're somewhere we're not. Tristan's mind was working through the tactical puzzle, seeing angles and opportunities the way a chess master sees moves ahead. Can you access the yacht's intercom system remotely? Evelyn thought for a moment. Possibly. If I can reach a crew tablet, they're linked to the ship's network. But won't they trace the signal? Let them. We want them looking in the wrong places. Tristan checked the time on his phone. Derek's deadline is in 15 minutes. We need to move now. They emerged from the maintenance shaft into a crew corridor near the galley. The kitchen area was dark, equipment powered down, but Tristan knew exactly where the emergency crew tablets were stored. He'd used them dozens of times for routine maintenance checks. He retrieved one from its charging station, handed it to Evelyn. How long do you need? Her fingers flew across the screen, bypassing security protocols with the kind of speed that came from designing the systems in the first place. 2 minutes to establish access. Then we're in business. Access. Then we're in business. While she worked, Tristan moved to the galley's service window, which offered a narrow view of the main deck. He could see 2 hijackers escorting a group of 5 hostages toward the stern. Among them, he recognized Captain Henson and Cora Lawrence. The elderly investor Derek had mentioned earlier was there too, his face pale in the deck lighting. Got it, Evelyn whispered urgently. I have control of the intercom and the automation systems. What do you want me to do? First, trigger the fire suppression system in the engine room. Not enough to cause real damage, but enough to create a genuine emergency that requires immediate attention. Evelyn's fingers tapped commands. Seconds later, alarms wailed throughout the yacht. Through the service window, Tristan watched the hijackers' heads snap up, confusion evident in their body language. Derek's voice crackled over their radios, audible even from Tristan's position. Status report. What's happening? Fire suppression activated in the engine room, one of his men responded. Could be a malfunction or actual fire. Sending a team to investigate. No, Derek snapped. Keep the hostages secured. This could be a diversion. Smart, Tristan thought. Derek wasn't taking the bait completely. Time for phase 2. Now access the intercom, Tristan instructed. Route it so it appears to be coming from the crew quarters on deck 3, forward section. Evelyn made the adjustments, then handed him the tablet. Tristan spoke clearly into the microphone. Derek Vaughn. This is Tristan Boyd. You want to negotiate? Let's talk. But first, you're going to release those 5 hostages you're threatening. Otherwise, the next system failure won't be a warning. He cut the connection before Derek could respond. On the screen, Evelyn brought up the security camera feeds, hacking into the closed-circuit system. They watched Derek on the bridge, his face contorted with rage. Secure deck 3, Derek ordered his team. I want Boyd found and brought to me. Alive if possible, but dead works too. 6 hijackers broke away from their positions and headed toward the forward crew quarters. Exactly as Tristan had planned. "They're taking the bait," Evelyn observed, "which gives us maybe 3 minutes before they realize it's a decoy and redeploy." Tristan was already moving toward the galley's rear exit. "Can you lock the doors behind them once they're in that section?" Evelyn's fingers danced across the tablet. "I can seal that entire corridor. The override would take them at least 10 minutes to crack. Do it as soon as they're in position. Then meet me at the auxiliary equipment locker, Deck 2, port side." "And Evelyn?" He turned to face her. "Whatever happens next, stay behind me and follow my instructions exactly. No hesitation, no second guessing. Can you do that?" She met his gaze without flinching. "I didn't build a billion-dollar company by hesitating. Let's go save my people." They split up, Evelyn taking the starboard crew passage while Tristan circled toward the stern through the galley. He moved like smoke through the yacht's familiar corridors. Every sense heightened, every muscle ready docked through the galley's exterior door. He could see the 5 hostages lined up at the aft railing, 2 guards standing watch. The guards were distracted, looking toward the forward section where Derek had sent the search team. Tristan slipped through the door silently, using the shadows cast by the yacht's superstructure. The first guard never saw him coming. One moment he was standing alert, weapon ready. The next, Tristan's arm was around his throat in a perfect blood choke. 10 seconds later, the guard was unconscious, lowered silently to the deck. The second guard turned at some subtle sound, weapon swinging around. But Tristan was already inside his decision loop, moving faster than the man could react. A strike to the weapon arm, numbing the nerves. A palm to the solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. A foot sweep, and gravity finished the conversation. "Everybody down," Tristan commanded the hostages in a low, urgent voice. "Stay low and quiet." Captain Henson's eyes went wide with recognition. "Boyd, what are you doing?" "My job. Stay here. Stay down." "Help is coming." Tristan secured the unconscious guards with their own restraints, then activated his stolen radio. "Derek, this is Boyd again. I'm at the stern. Your 2 guards are taking a nap. Want to discuss terms now?" The response was immediate and furious. "You're making this much worse for yourself. For everyone." "I don't think so. See, every minute you waste trying to find me is another minute. I'm taking apart your operation piece by piece. How many men have you lost now? 4? 5? How long before your employers start wondering if you're worth what they're paying?" It was psychological warfare, attacking Derek's professional pride and his practical concerns simultaneously. Men like Derek operated on reputation. Every setback damaged that currency. "You can't save them all," Derek said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Even if you were special forces, even if you were the best operator in the world, you're one man against my entire team. The math doesn't work in your favor." "Maybe not," Tristan replied calmly. "But I don't need to beat all of you. I just need to make this operation cost more than it's worth. Every complication, every delay, every guard I neutralize, it all adds up. Eventually, your buyers are going to start asking questions. And men in your profession can't afford too many questions." He cut the transmission and moved quickly back toward the interior, knowing Derek would redirect his forces to the stern. The 5 hostages were already being ushered to safety by crew members. Tristan had signaled through hand gestures. Disappearing into the maze of passages. Evelyn was waiting at the rendezvous point, the tablet clutched in her hands. "I locked down the forward section. 6 of his men are trapped there, and the override is going to take them a while to break." "Good. That puts us at 9 neutralized or contained out of 15. Derek's running out of personnel." Tristan checked the tablet, studying the security feeds. "He's pulling everyone back to defensive positions around the bridge and the main salon. He knows he's losing tactical advantage. So what's our next move?" Tristan's expression hardened. We've bought time and reduced his numbers. Now we need to go on offense. Derek's got your laptop, and he's got the remaining hostages as leverage. We need to take both away from him. How? He'll be expecting us now. He'll have the bridge locked down, multiple guards, prepared positions. He will, Tristan agreed. Which is why we're not going through the front door. This yacht has maintenance access to every critical system, including ventilation shafts large enough for a person to move through. They're not designed for it, but they'll work. Evelyn looked at the schematic he was showing her, tracing the path from their current position to the bridge. That's a long crawl through tight spaces. You wanted to help. This is how. He met her eyes, making sure she understood the stakes. Once we're in motion, there's no turning back. Derek will figure out what we're doing, and he'll try to stop us. It's going to be dangerous, possibly more dangerous than anything you've faced in your life. Evelyn thought of her company, built from nothing through countless nights of risk and determination. She thought of the people in the salon, terrified and depending on decisions she'd made when she'd invited them on this cruise. And she thought of the quiet deckhand who'd turned out to be so much more, who was risking everything for people he barely knew. "Let's go save my yacht," she said firmly. "And then let's make Derek Vaughn regret the day he decided to target quantum dynamics." Tristan allowed himself a brief smile. "Stay close and stay quiet. And Ms. Thomas? When this is over, we're going to have a long conversation about yacht security protocols. Despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the impossible odds," Evelyn laughed. "I'll add it to the agenda." They disappeared into the maintenance access. Two people against a team of trained killers, armed with nothing but determination, technical knowledge, and the skills of a man who'd spent 12 years learning how to win when the odds said he should lose. Behind them, Derek Vaughn stared at his security monitors, watching his operation unravel, and began to understand that he'd made a critical miscalculation. The quiet deckhand wasn't hiding anymore, he was hunting. The ventilation shaft was cramped, hot, and pitch black except for the faint glow of Tristan's phone providing minimal light. Evelyn crawled behind him, her designer dress torn and stained, her hands scraped from the rough metal surfaces. Every sound echoed and amplified in the confined space, making even their breathing seem dangerously loud. "How much further?" Evelyn whispered, her voice strained from exertion and stress. 50 feet to the bridge access point," Tristan replied quietly. "But we need to stop here for a moment. There's something you should know before we continue." They'd reached a junction where the shaft widened slightly, enough room to sit up rather than crawl. Tristan positioned himself so he could see Evelyn's face in the dim light. "When we reach the bridge, things are going to happen very fast," he said. "Derek will have at least 3 guards with him, possibly more. The space is confined, which works to my advantage, but it also means there's no room for error. If something goes wrong, if I go down, you need to know what to do next." "Don't talk like that," Evelyn said, but her voice wavered. "I have to. Because the mission doesn't end with me. It ends with you and everyone else safely off this yacht." He pulled up detailed schematics on his phone. "If I'm incapacitated, you get to your laptop, access the yacht's emergency beacon system, and transmit on all frequencies. Coast Guard, maritime traffic, everyone within 100 miles will hear it. Then you lock yourself in the bridge's safe room, that reinforced compartment designed for piracy situations, and you wait for help." Evelyn was shaking her head. "You're not going to be incapacitated. You've handled everything so far. I've been lucky, and I've had the element of surprise. But Derek knows what he's dealing with now. He's prepared, and his men will shoot on sight." Tristan paused, then continued with deliberate intensity. "I need you to promise me something. If it comes down to a choice between saving me or saving yourself and accessing that laptop, you choose the laptop. You choose the mission. Do you understand?" That's not fair, Evelyn said, emotion cracking through her controlled exterior. You don't get to ask me to leave you behind after everything you've done tonight. It's not about fair. It's about what matters most. Tristan's voice softened. I have a daughter, Luna. She's 7 years old. Right now, she's with my neighbor in Villefranche-sur-Mer, thinking her dad is on a boring cruise with rich people. If something happens to me tonight, I need to know that it counted for something. That the 32 people on this yacht made it home because I did my job. The raw vulnerability in his words struck Evelyn harder than any of the violence they'd witnessed. Here was a man who'd spent his life in the shadows, protecting others without recognition. And now he was asking her to potentially watch him die for people who'd never know his name. Tell me about her, Evelyn said quietly. Your daughter. Tristan's expression softened in a way she hadn't seen before. Luna is everything good in the world that I'm not. She's curious, fearless, infinitely kind. She wants to be an astronaut and a marine biologist, apparently at the same time. She makes me read her 3 stories every night, always insists on picking the vegetables at the market, because she says they taste better when you choose them yourself. She sounds remarkable. She is. And she deserves to grow up with a father who kept his promises. I promised her when I left the SEALs that I was done with violence, done with risking my life. Tonight broke that promise, but at least it was for the right reasons. Evelyn reached out in the darkness, finding his hand. You haven't broken any promises. You're protecting people, keeping them safe. That's what fathers do, what good people do. Luna would understand that. Maybe. Or maybe she'd just remember that her dad didn't come home because he chose to fight instead of walk away. Tristan's voice carried years of accumulated weight. After her mother died, after I left the teams, I swore I'd build a different life. No more operations, no more combat, no more situations where I had to choose between mission objectives and personal safety. But here you are anyway, Evelyn said gently. Here I am anyway. Because when Derek made his threats, when he started selecting people to hurt, I saw Aaron and Simon again. My teammates who died in that Gulf of Aden operation. And I realized that walking away from violence doesn't mean you get to ignore it when it happens right in front of you. They sat in silence for a moment. 2 people from completely different worlds finding unexpected common. Ground in a ventilation shaft while armed hijackers hunted them. I built quantum dynamics because I believe technology could make the world safer, Evelyn said finally. Encryption that couldn't be broken, security that couldn't be compromised. I wanted to protect information the way you protect people. But tonight showed me how naive that was. All the algorithms in the world don't matter when someone shows up with guns and threats. You're wrong, Tristan said. What you built matters enormously. It matters because it represents a choice to create rather than destroy, to build systems that protect rather than harm. Derek wants your technology specifically because it threatens people like him, people who operate in shadows and rely on exploiting vulnerabilities. But I couldn't protect anyone tonight. I was helpless until you intervened. You weren't helpless. You made a choice not to give Derek what he wanted, knowing it might cost you everything. That takes a different kind of courage than what I do. I was trained for violence, conditioned to respond to threats with force. You were trained to build and create, yet you still chose to resist. That's remarkable. Evelyn felt tears forming, the stress and fear and exhaustion of the night, finally breaking through her carefully maintained composure. I'm terrified. Of what happens next, of whether everyone makes it out, of whether I made the right choices tonight. Fear isn't weakness, Tristan said firmly. Fear is your brain telling you that something matters enough to be afraid of losing it. The people in that salon matter. Your company matters. Going home to your life matters. I've seen truly fearless people, and they're either psychopaths or too inexperienced to understand the stakes. You're neither. Were you afraid? During your SEAL operations? Every single time. Before every mission. During every firefight. After every close call. The fear never goes away. You just learn to function despite it. To make decisions and take action even when every instinct is screaming at you to freeze or run. He paused. The operation where I lost Aaron and Simon, I was more afraid than I'd ever been. We were outnumbered, outgunned, pinned down in a kill zone. But I couldn't let the fear stop me, because 17 people were counting on me to get them out. And you did get them out. At a cost. There's always a cost. Tristan checked his phone, noting the time. Derek's going to make another move soon. His timeline is collapsing, and desperate men make mistakes. We need to be ready to exploit those mistakes. Before we move, Evelyn said, I need to ask you something. When this is over, assuming we survive, what happens to you? Do you go back to being a deckhand? Do you disappear again into that quiet life? Tristan considered the question. In truth, he'd been asking himself the same thing since the moment he'd stepped out of the shadows and engaged the hijackers. The life he'd carefully constructed, the peaceful anonymity he'd cultivated, it was gone now. Too many people had seen what he could do. Too many questions would be asked. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe the quiet life was always temporary. Maybe you can't really leave certain things behind, you just postpone them. Or maybe, Evelyn suggested, you've been hiding a gift that could help a lot of people. My company needs security expertise, real expertise from someone who understands threats at every level. Someone who can protect not just data and algorithms, but the people behind them. You're offering me a job? In the middle of a hijacking? I'm suggesting that when this is over, if you want something more than swabbing decks, there might be options. Options that let you use your skills without returning to the military. Options that keep you close to your daughter while still making a difference. Tristan smiled despite the circumstances. Let's survive the next hour first. Then we can discuss career opportunities. Deal. Evelyn squeezed his hand once more, then released it. So what's the plan? How do we take back the bridge? Tristan's expression shifted, the vulnerability replaced by tactical focus. The ventilation shaft opens into the bridge's communications closet, a small space behind the main equipment panels. From there, we'll have a direct line of sight to the bridge proper. I go in first, neutralize immediate threats, create enough chaos for you to reach your laptop. How many seconds are we talking about? Between when you engage and when I need to move. 3 seconds, maybe 4. I'll handle the guards closest to the communications closet. The ones further away will take longer, and that's when it gets dangerous. Stay low, move fast, and whatever you do, don't stop to help me. Get to the laptop, lock down the yacht systems, and send that distress signal. 3 seconds to change everything, Evelyn murmured. That's all any of us ever get. The moments that matter, they're always shorter than we expect. Tristan began moving forward again, deeper into the shaft. Time to find out what we're really made of. They crawled in darkness toward the bridge. Toward Derek Vaughn and his remaining guards. Toward a confrontation that would determine whether 32 people saw another sunrise. Behind them, the yacht's engines hummed steadily, carrying them further into international waters where help was hours away, and where the only thing standing between innocent people and disaster was a former SEAL who'd tried to walk away from war, and a CEO who discovered that some battles couldn't be fought with algorithms and market strategies. Sometimes, Tristan thought as they neared the access point, the only way forward is through the fire. And sometimes the people you'd least expect to fight beside you turn out to be exactly who you need when everything falls apart. He just hoped that when the shooting started, hope would be enough. The communications closet behind the bridge was barely large enough for 2 people. Filled with server racks, cable bundles, and the soft hum of electronic equipment. Tristan and Evelyn emerged from the ventilation shaft covered in dust and sweat, moving with exaggerated care to avoid making noise that would alert the guards on the other side of the thin partition wall. Through a narrow maintenance gap, Tristan could see into the bridge proper. Derek Vaughn stood at the helm, Evelyn's laptop open before him, his fingers moving impatiently across the keyboard. 3 guards were positioned strategically around the space, one by the main entrance, one near the communications station, and one at the starboard observation window. All 3 held weapons with the casual readiness of professionals on high alert. "This encryption is more sophisticated than I expected," Derek was saying into a satellite phone. "Yes, I understand the timeline, but breaking a quantum-level security protocol isn't something you do with brute force. I need more time, or I need the woman herself to provide access." Tristan caught Evelyn's eye and held up 3 fingers, then pointed to each guard's position in sequence. She nodded, understanding. He'd explained the plan during their crawl through the shaft. He would engage the moment he emerged, drawing fire and attention while she went for the laptop. Simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution, but impossible was just another Tuesday for a SEAL. Tristan took 3 slow, controlled breaths, centering himself the way he'd been taught in selection training a lifetime ago. His hands were steady, his mind clear of everything except the tactical problem before him. Distance to targets: Guard 1 at 12 feet, Guard 2 at 18, Guard 3 at 25. Obstacles: 2 helm chairs, a navigation console, various equipment that could provide cover or concealment. Variables: Derek's reaction time, possibility of additional guards arriving, structural integrity of the partition wall he was about to breach. He met Evelyn's eyes one final time. Fear was written clearly on her face, but so was determination. She'd come a long way from the CEO in the designer dress who'd been toasting innovation just hours ago. Crisis had a way of revealing who people really were beneath the surface polish. "On my move," Tristan whispered. 3 seconds, go." He drove his shoulder into the partition wall, and the world exploded into motion. The wall, never designed to withstand impact, buckled and gave way. Tristan burst through into the bridge, immediately rolling left to disrupt any aimed fire. The guard near the communication station reacted fastest, weapon swinging toward the sudden breach. But Tristan was already inside his decision loop. A thrown piece of equipment, a heavy marine radio, struck the guard's weapon hand with enough force to disrupt his aim. The burst of automatic fire that followed went high and wide, punching holes in the ceiling. Before the guard could recover, Tristan closed the distance with explosive speed, delivering a precise strike to the brachial plexus nerve, cluster that dropped the weapon from nerveless fingers. The second guard, by the entrance, had clearer lines of fire. He opened up with controlled bursts, tracking Tristan's movement, but Tristan had already anticipated the angles. He used the helm console for cover, feeling rounds impact the equipment inches from his position, then vaulted over the console, in a move that put him in the guard's blind spot. What happened next took less than 2 seconds, but would be analyzed frame by frame later on security footage that would go viral across every maritime security forum in the world. Tristan's hand swept the weapon barrel aside mid-burst, round stitching harmlessly across the bridge windows. His other hand delivered a palm strike to the guard's floating ribs, precisely calculated to cause pain and disruption without permanent damage. A foot sweep, a controlled throw, and the guard went down hard. 2 down in under 5 seconds. The third guard, positioned at the starboard window, had the tactical advantage of distance and clear firing lanes. He opened up with sustained fire, forcing Tristan to dive behind the navigation console. Rounds tore through equipment, showering sparks and shattered displays. The guard advanced, confident in his superior position, weapon tracking methodically. He never saw Evelyn. While all attention was focused on Tristan's assault, Evelyn had moved exactly as instructed. 3 seconds of chaos were all she needed to cross the bridge at a dead sprint, diving for her laptop on Derek's abandoned command station. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who designed these systems from the ground up. Derek Vaughn's shocked curse was the first indication that things had gone catastrophically wrong for the hijacking team. "Stop her!" he bellowed, reaching for his sidearm. "Don't let her access those systems." But Evelyn was already in, her administrative credentials bypassing security protocols in microseconds. The yacht's entire automation system spread before her like a three-dimensional chessboard, every system, every control, every failsafe now at her command. Her first action was to trigger the emergency lockdown protocol, sealing every door on the bridge level except the communications closet they'd emerged from. The heavy security doors slammed shut with pneumatic hisses, cutting off Derek's ability to call reinforcements. Her second action was to activate the yacht's distress beacon system at maximum power, broadcasting their position and emergency status on every maritime frequency. Within seconds, Coast Guard stations from Nice to Corsica would be receiving their SOS. Her third action was to turn the yacht itself into a weapon against its captors. "Tristan, hold on to something," she shouted, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. The yacht's automated ballast system engaged with violent force, shifting thousands of gallons of water from port to starboard tanks in seconds. The entire vessel lurched hard to starboard, tilting at a sharp angle that sent unsecured equipment and personnel sliding across the deck. The third guard, caught mid-advance, lost his footing completely. His weapon clattered away as he grabbed desperately for a handhold. Tristan, braced against the navigation console, wrote out the list and moved immediately, closing the distance while the guard was off balance. The confrontation was brief and decisive. A controlled strike to disable, not to kill, though at this point, Tristan wouldn't have blamed himself for less restraint. The guard went down, and suddenly the bridge held only 3 conscious people: Tristan, Evelyn, and Derek Vaughn. Derek had managed to keep his feet during the list, one hand gripping a support stanchion. His sidearm in the other hand now pointed directly at Evelyn. "Impressive," Derek said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "But it doesn't change the mathematics. I still have a weapon, and you still have 30 seconds before I put a round through your cerebral cortex." Tristan froze, 20 feet away, too far to close the distance before Derek could fire. This was the scenario every operator dreaded. The hostage situation where speed and skill meant nothing against a bullet already aimed at an innocent. "You're done, Derek," Tristan said, his voice carrying absolute certainty despite the impossible situation. "Coast Guard is already en route. Your team is scattered and contained. Your employers are going to hear how spectacularly you failed. Killing her accomplishes nothing except adding murder to your charges." "Maybe I don't care about the charges anymore," Derek replied. "Maybe I care about sending a message about what happens when people interfere with my operations." His finger tightened on the trigger. What happened next became the stuff of maritime security legend, analyzed in training courses and tactical seminars for years to come. In the microsecond before Derek could complete his trigger pull, Evelyn's fingers executed one final command on her laptop: the yacht's fire suppression system, located directly above Derek's position, activated with explosive force. A deluge of flame-retardant foam erupted from the sealing nozzle, instantly engulfing Derek in a white cloud that filled his eyes, nose, and mouth. The gunshot went wide, the round embedding itself harmlessly in the bridge wall. Derek staggered, blinded, choking on foam, his weapon hand waving ineffectively in the chemical cloud. Tristan moved like lightning, crossing the distance in 3 long strides. His hand captured Derek's wrist in an iron grip, applying a joint lock that forced the weapon to drop. His other hand struck Derek's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. 5 seconds later, Derek Vaughn was face down on the deck, hands secured behind his back with his own restraints, coughing foam and curses in equal measure. "That," Evelyn said, her voice shaking but triumphant, "is what happens when you threaten a tech CEO on her own yacht." Tristan couldn't help but laugh, the sound carrying relief and exhaustion in equal measure. "Remind me never to make you angry." The bridge doors opened then, pneumatics releasing as Evelyn input override codes. Captain Henson appeared, followed by crew members and freed hostages, their faces showing shock and relief at the scene before them. "Miss Thomas," the captain said, his voice thick with emotion, "the yacht is secure. Mr. Boyd and several crew members have systematically neutralized or contained all hostile forces. Coast Guard is 15 minutes out." Evelyn looked at Tristan, really looked at him, seeing past the combat-ready operator to the father who just wanted to go home to his daughter. "I think we need to have that conversation about security protocols now." "Later," Tristan said, moving toward the communication station to coordinate with the incoming Coast Guard vessels. "Right now, let's just make sure everyone gets home safe." On the deck below, the remaining hijackers were being secured by crew members under Tristan's radioed instructions. The hostages were being checked for injuries, given blankets and water, the simple comforts of people who'd survived something they'd never forget. Something they'd never forget. The yacht's engines hummed steadily as Evelyn input new coordinates, turning the vessel back toward the French coast. The Mediterranean stretched calm and infinite around them. Indifferent to the drama that had played out on its surface, Derek Vaughan, still secured on the bridge deck, looked up at Tristan with something between respect and fury. "Who the hell are you really?" Tristan crouched beside him, his voice low enough that only Derek could hear. "I'm someone who learned a long time ago that the only thing more important than winning a fight is making sure the right people get to go home at the end of the day. And tonight, the right people won." As the Coast Guard vessels appeared on the horizon, their lights cutting through the darkness, Tristan pulled out his phone and sent a simple message to his neighbor in Villefranche-sur-Mer. "Crew's running late. Be home tomorrow morning. Hug Luna for me." The response came back immediately. "She's asleep, but I'll tell her when she wakes." "Everything okay?" Tristan looked around the bridge, at the subdued hijacker, the freed hostages, the CEO who'd learned to fight with systems and code, and allowed himself the smallest smile. "Everything's fine," he typed back. "Just had to handle some unexpected repairs. Nothing I couldn't fix." The French Coast Guard arrived with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed operation. 3 vessels surrounding the Seraphin's Dream as dawn broke over the Mediterranean. Within an hour, Derek Vaughan and his entire team were in custody, transferred to the lead vessel in restraints while investigators swarmed the yacht, documenting evidence. Evelyn stood on the upper deck with Tristan, watching the sun paint the water gold. A Coast Guard commander approached with a tablet, his expression grave. "Ms. Thomas, we've reviewed the security footage and radio intercepts. What we're seeing is extraordinary. Mr. Boyd's actions saved 32 lives." He turned to Tristan. "Sir, your tactical response was textbook. Where did you receive your training?" "Navy SEALs," Tristan replied simply. "Retired 6 years ago." The commander's eyes widened with recognition and respect. "That explains everything. We'll need detailed statements from both of you, but I want you to know that Derek Vaughan and his operation are finished. We've already identified his financial backers through the communications you preserved. This goes much deeper than one hijacking." Within hours, the story broke worldwide. News helicopters circled the yacht as it sailed into port under Coast Guard escort. The footage was everywhere. Tristan's systematic takedown of the hijackers, Evelyn's brilliant use of the yacht systems against their captors, the dramatic bridge confrontation that ended with Derek covered in fire-retardant foam. But what captured the public's imagination most was the revelation of who Tristan Boyd really was. A decorated SEAL who'd walked away from glory to raise his daughter in peace. who'd become a deckhand not because he had to, but because he chose quiet service over recognition. International authorities moved swiftly. Derek's employers, a network of criminal organizations seeking quantum dynamics encryption technology, found their operations exposed and dismantled. Warrants were issued across multiple countries. The hijacking that was meant to secure technological secrets instead became the thread that unraveled an entire criminal enterprise. Evelyn held a press conference from the yacht, Tristan standing reluctantly beside her. What happened here wasn't about one person being a hero, she told the assembled media. It was about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. Mr. Boyd's actions were remarkable, but so were the crew members who secured hostages, the captain who maintained calm, every person who refused to surrender to fear. The world disagreed. They wanted their hero, and they'd found him in the quiet deckhand who'd saved everyone. 3 weeks later, Tristan sat on a park bench in Villefranche-sur-Mer, watching Luna play on the swings. The media frenzy had finally begun to fade, though he still occasionally noticed people recognizing him, taking quick photos before moving on. Evelyn approached across the grass, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Please." Tristan gestured to the empty space beside him. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Luna laugh as she swung higher. "The board approved my proposal," Evelyn said finally. "Quantum Dynamics is creating a new security division, focusing on protecting not just data, but the people behind it. Physical security, threat assessment, crisis response, all integrated with our existing technology. Congratulations. The position of security director is still open. The salary is substantial, the work is meaningful, and most importantly, it's based here in France. You'd be home every night." Tristan smiled. "You're persistent. I learned from the best." Evelyn's expression grew serious. "You told me in that ventilation shaft that you'd broken your promise to Luna about being done with violence. But I don't think you did. You protected people using skills that took years to develop. There's no shame in that, only honor." Luna ran over, breathless and grinning. "Dad, did you see how high I went?" "I did, sweetheart. You were flying." She noticed Evelyn and waved shyly. "Are you the lady from the big boat?" "I am. Your father is a remarkable man, did you know that?" Luna nodded seriously. "Everyone keeps saying that, but he's just my dad. He makes breakfast and fixes things and tells good stories. Those are the most important jobs in the world," Evelyn said gently. After Luna returned to the swings, Tristan turned to Evelyn. "I'll think about your offer. But whatever I decide, it has to be what's best for her. I wouldn't expect anything less." As Evelyn walked away, Tristan felt something shift inside him. Maybe you didn't have to choose between protecting people and being present for your family. Maybe the skills he'd tried to leave behind weren't a burden but a gift, something to be used wisely rather than buried completely. The Mediterranean sparkled in the afternoon sun, peaceful and infinite. Somewhere across those waters, lives had been saved and justice had been served. Not because of headlines or recognition, but because when the moment demanded it, one person had stepped forward. Luna called to him again, and Tristan stood, walking toward his daughter with the calm certainty that whatever came next, he'd face it the same way he'd faced everything else, with quiet strength, unwavering purpose, and the knowledge that the greatest victories are the ones no one ever has to know about. The world could keep its heroes. He'd rather just be a father who kept his promises. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.